Hello, everyone. Welcome to Briar Haus Writes. I'm Becky Parker, and today it is my honor to be able to have with us Charles Swanson. Charles is pastor of the Melview Avenue Baptist Church in Danville, Virginia. He's a writer whose work is frequently published in the Appalachian region and elsewhere, with 2 books of poems. He's written After the Garden, published by Moats Books, and Farm Life and Legend from Finishing Line Press. In addition, he has well over 100 poems published in various journals, magazines, and he's also the current editor and co-editor in chief of the online poetry magazine Songs of Eretz Poetry, which can be found at www.songsoferetz.com. Charles, welcome to our program.
Thank you. So good to be here.
Charles, tell us a
Really,
little bit about yourself.
my wife has been doing some genealogy research, so that's at the top of my head right now. She found that we probably both go back all the way to Jamestown to a couple of the, at least one or two of the persons who came across the ocean and helped settle Jamestown. And I know I have an ancestor who was at Williamsburg, so I'm definitely a Virginia boy through generations. Um, I had this picture. I was working on my piano, and I thought, well, I'll just show this one right here. Is this a good view of it?
No,
Up a
oh,
little
hold it
bit.
up just a little bit more, Charles. Like that. Oh, wow! Look at that little guy. He's so cute.
Yeah, that little guy is me many years ago. Yeah, it's amazing how much we change.
I know as a pastor you write sermons, but how did you come to write poetry and all the other things that you write?
I think what started me was a love of images um, back about the eighth or ninth grade, and and then the thing that went along with that was I got fascinated with meter in ninth grade when our teacher introduced that to us. It was, I guess, a type of math that I thought was just absolutely marvelous. Not that I was a math person,
Hmm.
but I love the counting the stresses and trying to figure out what the various accent patterns were and how they could work in a poem. So it started there. I was lucky enough to have 3 poems published in North Carolina Wildlife when I was just a kid, when I was a teenager in high school.
Oh,
And
wow.
the editors were so nice that they used a full color or full size picture on the inside front cover for those poems and imposed the poem on top of the picture. So, I just thought at that point that getting poems published was quite easy, but it's not. It's not easy at all. Um, but anyway, I've been writing all of my life and sometimes focusing on it with a much more intensity and sometimes not so much. But it's a long journey for me.
You
So
mentioned that your wife, do you write poetry for her?
I've written poems that include her. Yes, definitely. I don't know if I have any of those today to read. There are some poems about women, though, I've got to read.
Well,
But
how
yeah,
did you become involved with the Songs of Eretz Poetry Review?
well, it was one of those cases where I was submitting work. I had a poem that I thought might work well as science fiction, or fantasy, really fantasy, and I sent it to a magazine, and the associate editor there was very keen on the poem, and they held it for a year. And when I queried him, he said, "We're going to make a decision." So he got back to me and he said, I just cannot convince the fellow editors. But I tell you, if you'll submit to Songs of Eretz, where he was also an associate editor at the time, he said, I think you'll get a good read there. And the editor, Stephen Gordon, really did like it quite a bit. And that started me on the path with Songs of Eretz. I went from being just a submitter to eventually to a frequent contributor and then to a assistant editor. And now I have a whole lot of voice in what's published and what's not published.
How do you
Kind of,
come about when it comes to knowing what is appropriate for your um, your poetry online? Does Songs of Eretz, for those who aren't familiar, does it strictly go online poetry, and do you have themes that you go by, or how does that work?
it is strictly online at this time, and we do have themes, but they can be quite varied. We have published poems that were a specific form, We've, and it done an issue on Japanese forms, for example. We had one issue that was a political issue, and Stephen Gordon was afterwards. He said, "I don't think I'll ever do this again." Evidently, it was hard for him. I was not helping to edit at that time, but it was evidently hard for him to wade through all of the loud voices and stuff today. But sometimes the themes are just thought provocative, like the one we're just finishing up on digging. There's a
Mhm.
lot of ways to approach that theme, and I'm sure the ones we come up with next year will probably be a mixture of s- form orientation. Perhaps we're considering, for example, the possibility of doing an issue on laments, which is both a style and can be a form, or can forms can be used in that. We are we don't restrict the magazine to a particular form unless we're calling for that at during a theme. And so it's pretty varied, and we publish 4 times a year, which is quite often.
That is. Um, well, Charles, would you care to read some of your work for us? We'd love to hear.
Did an issue on dramatic monologues recently, and one of the things we asked the writers, I sent this to them quite a few times. I said, "Who is the speaker talking to in the poem?" Robert Browning's poem "To My Last Duchess" was kind of a touchstone for that particular issue because it's such a fantastic poem.
Mhm.
So, 2 poems that I sent in and we published were about this is Hansel and Gretel story, but I played off of that. And this first one is the stepmother who's talking, and she's telling us a little bit more about the story. Of course, it doesn't appear in the fairy tale. Over a stein, the stepmother brags. I watched when his first wife died. I bided a while, long enough for him to feel his lack, his loneliness. I knew he wished her back into his bed, so then I knew my wiles would work the charm. He couldn't notice guile with heart so sad. I did it shrewdly, cracked the whip against his children behind his back, and spoke to him sweet nothings. How I smiled. They were sweet nothings. They meant naught to me. I stinted the brats every chance I took. I was so cruel. I hoped he wouldn't see how they cowered every time I spoke. He didn't. I tortured them every single day. My smile was biggest when they ran away.
Mm.
And then I had one that the woodcutter makes his own response to um, what his stepmother, that is his wife, new second wife, says to that whole situation. And he makes these confessions in the beer hall where he would go to drown his sorrows. So at the beer hall, the woodcutter laments. My first wife died. The house was not a home. The children, boy and girl, they needed care, a mother's touch. I couldn't be alone. Perhaps I chose too fast, or she was there, just waiting. Hard to them she was, so hard, with curses leaping off her bitter tongue. She kept the house keys under her close guard. She ate the best we had. I said the young need nourishment, but she said we should shed ourselves of them. If we but force them out, we'd have enough. Again, again, she said, you love them more than me, you selfish lout. I really did, but I couldn't find my voice. She battered me until I had no choice.
Wow.
So both of those are actually sonnets, but told in a narrative, voice. Each one confessing something about how and why he or she did what they did. Um,
And that
should I
seems a
continue?
lot like human nature, Charles.
Well,
Those
that's what I'm
poems.
looking for. Yeah. And we, in Songs of Eretz, we get to write poets' notes and about the work itself. And On that second one, I wrote, the Hansel and Gretel story is ripe ground for retelling. What particularly intrigues me are the points that intersect with modern society. I've met many men, some family members, who cannot be alone. A grieving man may seek comfort, companionship, or gratification from a poor source. If there are wicked stepmothers, there are also spineless fathers. So kind of neat to be able to, make some comments on your own work. Not too many magazines do that. Provide
Hmm.
the poets a chance to say something about where the poem came from or how they see the world.
Would you read some more for us?
Yeah, I'll read at least one and maybe two from a series I've been working on. Several of these poems have been published here or there, and it's what I call my stick figure man poems. So, and many years ago, I began to think about the stick figure and how the stick figure was used in art. And what especially moved me was Good News Bible from back in the 70s or 80s, where all of the artwork was line drawings. And I thought the line drawings were so moving, even though they were so simple. And so I began to think about how we could do more with less, reduce language somewhat to its minimum. And then the idea just kind of morphed. And so a lot of my poems are not, just simple line drawings themselves, but it is about how art speaks into the world and how we use even figures like the stick figure man to speak to the world. So this first one is something I've seen on the backs of cars, and I bet you have too. Um, that is decals with stick figure families. So it's called the Stick Figure Family Under Threat. And this is one out of a three-part series. One, curiosity sends Jim to his computer. He searches the internet, Googling images. What he's seen seems ironic. The childlike family, a simple group of sticks made into dad, mom, children on the back of an SUV. But in this case, being blown up, blown to smithereens. At the red light right before his car on the proverbial soccer mom vehicle, a nuclear family disintegrated. So he searches. No one cares about your stick figure family over and over, with cars impaling, dinosaurs smacking, ninjas in black masks wielding swords, zombies eating babies, Jason chasing, the chainsaw revving up, or our own inflictions, families with mom or dad missing, position open, families with the vilest beginnings. He sneers like a rapist, making my family. She bent over, helpless. Is this dad? Is mom a victim? Jim shakes his head as he scrolls down the page. He sees another dad and mom, normal, maybe. Daughter leg around a pole, selling herself. Son sold, crashing on drugs. He searches, discovers he can buy his own stick figure unit, choose for tender, familiar feelings, or choose for creaking fear. There's an interesting way of seeing the stick figure man. And some themes just open things up that are startling.
Right.
Sometimes it seems, such an innocent beginning to the theme or the series, but and a lot of them are much more innocent. I have one, for example, about stick figure man hiking with the Boy Scouts. So much more innocent than that one. And this one is a sonnet as a stick figure man poem. It's called "The Stick Figure Man Confides." I know a woman lovely in her bones, slightly misquoting Theodore Efke. I looked for her everywhere. She liked to hide. Mischievous grin, a crayon mark across her cunning face. She didn't choose things wide like barns to crouch behind. She would get lost in colonies of stalks, green swaths of bamboo, the knob-kneed patches of corn. She posed among the thorns of blackberry canes, breathed out, yoo-hoo, hiding her voice in nature's whispering tongues. She hid inside as well. I'd find her some days beside the brooms and mops. She merged like slats in front of vertical blinds. She turned away to show her angles, not a bit of fat. I loved her games, her every bone and stick. I'd find her slowly, but I loved her quick.
Well, Charles, how would you describe like your writing process, like the research, the time constraints, any topic challenges?
I recognize that I'm not quite like some poets who will write 5 and 6 pages and then condense. Sometimes the poem comes to me, on one page, so to speak. And back when I was writing all longhand before word processing age, I'd have a whole lot of cross outs and insertions, and page would get full. Richard Wilbur said that his process was kind of like that too. That it was kind of like the graffiti on a bathroom stall. But he said it wasn't. He said not that a poem is like going to the bathroom, but it was just so filled up, the page with the emendations. So that's often been the way I've written. Once I turned to the computer, I thought I can't write on the computer, but I found it to be very helpful because rather than deleting something, I could just move it down the page and say, I'll go back to this if this is something that works better." Um, Ideas come from all over, but I have moved more and more in two directions as I've aged. One is that I used to love to write nature poetry and just let it be about nature, and now I want a person in the poem, some
Mm.
kind of way. It can still be quite a bit about nature, but I want a person in it. So I still love the images, but I also like what people are dealing with, what they're going through. And the second direction that I've gone over time is I keep thinking in books series. So I do sit down and just write a poem, because the idea is there. But most of the time I'm thinking, now how does this fit into my Stick Figure Man series or another series that calling Wild Gatherings, and it's about going out and bringing foods in from outside that a lot of people don't look or don't hunt. And so that's been an interesting
Like a
pursuit as well.
foraging, you mean?
Yeah, it's a type of foraging. But again, as the thoughts have morphed, I've thought, well, there's also food history and there's traditions and what happened, like for example, with chicory during the Civil War. So, at first it was just going out and finding some wild plant that we were already using or that I was curious about. But
Hmm.
then it changed into hunting as well because I come from a hunting family. I'm no good at hunting myself. I'm terrible. But of course, that makes for tension in the poem. The person writing about hunting can't hit the side of a barn.
But it also can lead to different styles of poems, like fantasy poems or like the old folklores with when it
Mhm.
comes to food and hunting, because a lot
Yes,
of
it
the
can.
folklores were about food,
Yeah.
and
Mhm.
a lot of them were like,
One of my favorite ones that I wrote, just because I love the term, I wrote a poem about the sop, SOP. Southerners know what the sop is. Take that biscuit and run it around the bottom of the bowl.
sop
And I
it
thought
up.
yeah, sop it up. And it is a term, that's used in the story of Jesus at the Last Supper, because the one who sops in the bowl with him is the one who betrays him. But you don't find sop in every version. In some of the older versions, the word sop is used because it is such an old-timey word.
Right. And a
Mhm.
lot of people love to write poems about food because, when you talk about breaking bread and
Mhm.
what that means in different cultures,
Yeah.
their ability and like um, a lot of people do that. I wanted to ask you, as a writer, we often receive critiques and praise for our work. Some of us more praise than others, but how do you handle that? Whether it's the praise or the critique, how do you handle that personally?
Well, I'm gonna start in the middle, and that is so much of what I see even come to print never gets a comment. And so uh, sometimes it's hoping that somebody will read this and think it's good, and then wondering if they ever do. And then sometimes, just rarely, get feedback real quickly. And that happens more often in a writing workshop because people are there to make comments and they'll either cut it down or praise it.
And
um,
move it forward. I think that's the
mhm,
whole line in a workshop, especially is they want your work to move forward
mhm,
and want you to learn new styles of saying something. But is there ever a time when a writer, and maybe they have full-time jobs and they do poetry or writing novels and fiction stories on the side, but when someone gets so many rejections for their work, and I hate that term rejection, but that's how it feels for some people is that their work, they take it personally that their work is being rejected. But is there ever a time, Charles, that you would say, okay, you know what? It's time to throw in the towel? Or what would you recommend for that person who may be at that point?
well, as some other writers have said, it's good to write for yourself and have that desire to put things on the page and sometimes stop worrying about what somebody else is looking for as much as it is to say what's speaking to my own heart and why does it move me. And of course, that's the way I try to go. Um, I would like to represent in the world Christian values as a pastor. That moves me and directs me. But not every poem is about a Christian theme. And I know that as journeyers in this world, and as the Bible gives us so clearly,
Hmm.
mistakes are as common as victories. So a poem about problems and trouble is real when it comes to biblical themes. It's not, stepping aside. It's treating life as it really happens. In terms of the question, what would I say besides just keep on writing? Yeah, one time a door will open, another will close. But I keep in mind the little Snoopy cartoon or Snoopy Peanuts cartoon where Snoopy's sitting on his doghouse typing away a dark and stormy night. And Woodstock, the little bird, comes along with a little piece of paper in his bill. Of course, this is back before rejections on computers, but still, he comes with a little piece of paper in his bill. And Snoopy says, another rejection slip, file it with the rest. And back behind Snoopy's doghouse is a tree, bare tree, except for all the little rejection slips that are fluttering on it like it's Christmas ornaments. So he's gotten all these rejection slips, but meanwhile, Snoopy's still typing away on the roof of the doghouse. He's not going to let that stop him. And so that's what we have to do. I joked that back when we were getting rejection slips by paper, I said I could paper the wall of a room, with the rejection slips if I wanted to keep them. And I'll guarantee you that I've been upset by one or two, especially in my early days. But most of the time, I try to just say, well, there are a lot of great poets in the world, and they're sending in great stuff. So I have to keep that in mind.
And just keep on, as my daughter would say, keep moving forward. Just put one
Move
foot in front of
forward.
the other.
Mhm. Right.
We
Yeah.
live in a very
Mhm.
unsettling, often chaotic world right now. How do you protect your peace?
Well, one of the ways is by not engaging on social media by saying ugly things to people who are saying ugly things. I sure am tempted sometimes. But I think, well, that's not the way to represent God. It's not the way to represent good values, is to it's just come online and say, well, you're wrong or so forth. I may think that, but I think they're probably not going to hear me. I think I'll just make them more staunch in their opinion. And so I keep reading things that do upset me, but I have a good channel to go down. I'm teaching and preaching and also editing, and I have the opportunity to see work and to applaud things that bring better values into the world, and to ignore those things that are hurtful. So I'm blessed in that way.
What advice would you give to someone who has written a manuscript, but they don't quite know where to send it? How did what kind of advice would you give them?
I'm not the best at that myself because I really haven't worked too hard to get full manuscripts published. I do think finishing line press is a good way to go because they will publish a lot of work and they're nice books. But you do have to sell a lot of it yourself, which is not too different from online from self-publishing.
Hmm.
Self-publishing is not a bad way to go today either, but I would encourage people to work hard to get their poems accepted in one type of magazine or another so that they have a presence and so that a publisher would be more interested in the work. That's always been what people have told me. And that still doesn't say that automatically somebody's going to say, we'll publish you for you, but it certainly does help. So we gain traction just kind of one little bit at a time, like trying to go up a rope in the gym hand over hand, which I also was never very good at.
Me neither.
Yeah.
Golly, I was horrible at tumbling. Um,
Yeah.
as I get older, I think I'm better at tumbling because but back as a kid, I couldn't tumble in the gym. Um, well, Charles, tell us where we can find your work. Um,
Well, the two books that I have are one of them's out of print. I can't even get any copies myself. So you'd have to go online and pay for a used copy. And this is the one I'm talking about.
After the
And
garden.
yeah, After the Garden. It's a beautiful book, the way the publisher did it. And it is selected responses to the Psalms from the Old Testament. They're definitely not paraphrases or they're not interpretations. They're slices of life that connect in one way or another to a verse or two from the scripture. This is about my mother. I grew up on a tobacco farm, and it was flu cured tobacco, um, which we had to pick off the stalk uh, about through 7 or 8 different pullings. And in the day and time when I was a child, we had to grade every single leaf. So that meant we had to look at every leaf that had been cured before we sent it to the market. And my mother was the one who had to do most of that. My dad was an engineer and went to work, and we were in school. So she worked in what we called the pit. It was the lower story, the basement story of the pack house, and it was a damp, cold place. And she worked there for like 2 or 3 months every single day by herself, opening each leaf and looking at it and putting it aside. And then we would come as boys and my dad and in the evening and tie it up into bundles so we could then send it to the market.
Mhm.
So this is called the Farm Wife Grades, Ready in Tobacco for Market, Prince George, Virginia, 1960s. And the scripture quote that I used is this: I am reckoned among those who go down to the pit. Are thy wonders known in the darkness, or thy saving help in the land of forgetfulness? Psalm 88, verses 4 and 12. From late August to November, I live like a mole, except for the naked light bulb over my head and the tiny window with two panes in the corner near the joist. Or maybe a bear, except I don't sleep, spending every day huddled in the pit and into the night too, grading. The pit's a lonesome place, not where I choose to live. And when I go to the house to sleep, I grade tobacco leaves in my dreams. A light lemon here, brown there, leaves piled to the joist, and not even a bird at the window to remind me of outdoors. The window ought to be right in front, so the dark pit would seem a picture show. I would take joy in looking out, seeing something alive, swimming on the pond, ducks or geese lighting, fish breaking in circles. The autumn sleep that sheets the pond in ice. Instead, I sleep, grading and grade sleeping. The dim window trades places with the dull bulb, light for light, leaf for leaf, day for night, fall for this pit. I'd like to be kicking fall leaves, how live they seem, soaked in evening rains. But this joist shuts me in. Flying clouds for a low joist is not worth the money. It is sleep like death to pile the crop around you, live like a spider where even one window hurts because it reminds you of the pit. that you've been assigned to hide from the light. I will teach my boys to walk in the light, even when they join me under this joist in this damp concrete hole, this rank earth pit. Their talk will spark my day, rouse me from sleep, take me down hallways of school, a window into their world, and I will laugh at their lives. Their light limbs dance, even sitting. They'll sleep sweetly, quilts for a joist, dreams for windows, and the pit will speak family, love, and life. And
That
speaking
is
of my
beautiful.
process, thank you. That's a sestina, and I remember working on that, and I had to lay it aside for a couple of months and come back to it. I just couldn't get it to work out. So
It's
eventually,
just
I liked what I got to.
Well, it's just beautiful. And I love how you take and you use the forms because so many people only write um, in one form, they only write in sonnets usually. But I love the fact that you explore and experiment with them and you do enjoy rhyme and meter. That's just awesome.
I do, and I also enjoy experimental work. A magazine I would highly recommend to people who like to write things that are a little bit more unusual is evantappalachia.com because they like experimental work.
Oh, well, Charles, thank you so much for spending time with us today at Briar House Writes. It's been an honor getting to know
Thank
you.
you. Thank you. This is such a privilege for me.